You're in the wrong building, sweetheart.
I have an invitation.
Sure you do. Who'd you steal that coat from?
No one. May I come in?
No, this is a private event for real guests.
I am a guest, Mr. Haltmore.
You don't even know who I am, do you?
This is my hotel, my party, my city.
I know exactly who you are.
Then you know you don't belong here.
Security, get this trash off my floor.
Sir, please don't touch me.
Don't touch you? Sweetheart, I'm being generous letting you stand there.
The ballroom laughed. Someone raised a phone. And Willa Turner, wine still dripping from her coat, said nothing, because the sealed envelope at her hip would end him before midnight. Have you ever watched someone get judged by their coat, while they quietly held the power to burn the whole room down? 40 minutes earlier, there was no wine. There was only a quiet woman in a gray coat walking through the gold doors of the Haltmore Grand. The hotel was the crown of the city. 42 floors of marble and glass, a chandelier the size of a car hanging over the lobby. Tonight, it glowed for one occasion. 25 years of the Haltmore Group. Real estate, luxury resorts, half the skyline downtown. Willa Turner stepped inside and let the warmth settle over her. Outside it was raining. Her coat was damp at the shoulders. She did not hand it to the coat check. She kept it on. A young server passed with a tray of champagne. She shook her head and smiled at him. Just water. When you can. No rush. Of course, ma'am, he said. His name tag read Theo. He was maybe 19. He brought the water before he served anyone else. She found a small table near the edge of the ballroom and sat down. Not in the center, not near the stage, just a quiet seat where she could watch the room breathe. And the room was breathing money. Diamonds caught the light at every throat. Men in tailored black laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Waiters moved like dancers, trays balanced, smiles fixed. A string quartet played something soft beneath the noise. Willa watched it all the way a person watches a house they used to live in. Familiar, distant, a little sad. She had been to 100 rooms like this. She had signed the checks that paid for rooms like this. But tonight she did not want the head table or the microphone. Tonight she wanted to see the truth of the place when it didn't know who was looking. So she sat in her gray coat, water in front of her, and she watched. On the stage, a banner read, Haltmore, Building Tomorrow. Beneath it, a podium waited. Soon, a man would stand there and tell 300 guests how far vision and hard work could take you. Willa knew that man. She had been watching him for a long time. A woman 2 tables over leaned toward her friend and lowered her voice, though not enough. Did someone's housekeeper wander in? Her friend laughed behind her hand. Maybe she's lost. Willa heard it. She did not turn. She wrapped both hands around the cool glass of water and kept her eyes on the stage. She had heard worse. She would hear worse tonight. But she stayed, because she had come for a reason, and the reason was sealed inside a plain white envelope tucked into the inside pocket of that worn gray coat. She had not opened it in front of anyone yet. She was waiting to see who, in a room full of powerful people, would treat the woman in the cheap coat like she mattered, and who would treat her like she was nothing. It was a test. Quiet. Private. The kind of test where people fail without ever knowing they were being measured. Theo passed again and refilled her glass without being asked. "Can I get you anything else, ma'am? You look like you walked in from the storm." "I did," she said. "Thank you, Theo. You're kind. People remember kind." He didn't understand the weight of the words. He just smiled and moved on. Near the front, a cluster of guests parted, the way a crowd parts for a king. A tall man in a charcoal suit moved through them, shaking hands, gripping shoulders, owning every inch of the floor he crossed. Silver hair, gold watch, a smile that never reached his eyes. Sterling Haltmore, chairman. The face on the banner, the name on the building. He was working the room toward the stage, and his path would take him right past the small table at the edge, right past the quiet woman in the gray coat who had not stood, had not clapped, had not fawned over him like the rest. And then Sterling Haltmore stopped walking, turned, and looked down at the seated woman in the gray coat, the one person in his ballroom who hadn't risen for him. His smile thinned. He set his wineglass down on her table, leaned in close, and said the first cruel thing of the night. "Who let you in here?" Sterling's voice was soft, almost kind. That was the trick of it. He smiled while he said it, so the people nearby thought maybe he was being friendly. Willa looked up at him. "I let myself in. I have an invitation." "An invitation." He repeated the word slowly, tasting it. "To my anniversary gala." "You?" "Yes." "Show me." She reached into her coat, but Sterling raised a hand before she could pull anything out. "You know what? Don't bother. I can already smell the lie on you." He straightened and turned to the tables around them, raising his voice now, performing. Folks, look at this. We've got a guest tonight." Heads turned. Conversations died. The string quartet kept playing, but everyone else went quiet. "I run the tightest events in this city," Sterling said, walking a slow circle around her table. "Black tie, verified list, $200 a plate just to cover the flowers. And somehow," he gestured at her with an open palm, "this walked in." A few people laughed, the nervous kind of laugh, the kind people give when they're not sure if they're allowed. Willa kept her hands folded on the table. "My name is on your list, Mr. Haltmore. You can check it." "My list?" He leaned down, both hands flat on her table, close enough that she could smell the scotch under the cologne. "Sweetheart, I don't need a list. I've been doing this 30 years. I know what belongs in my ballroom and what doesn't. And you?" His eyes moved down the gray coat, the damp shoulders, the worn cuffs. "You don't." "Looks can fool people," she said quietly. "They usually do." Something flickered across his face. Not doubt, irritation. She wasn't playing her part. People he humiliated were supposed to shrink, to stammer, to run. This woman just sat there, calm as still water, and it bothered him more than any insult could have. "Stand up," he said. "I'd rather not." "I said stand up." He reached down, closed his hand around her upper arm, and pulled. It wasn't gentle. He hauled her out of the chair so fast that the table rocked and her water glass tipped, spilling a clear sheet across the white cloth. A woman gasped. Willa came to her feet off balance, one hand catching the edge of the table. "There," Sterling said, holding her arm, displaying her to the room. "Take a good look. This is what happens when security gets lazy. Anybody can wander in off the street, sit down at my event, drink my water, breathe my air. Let go of my arm." Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't shake either. "Or what?" he grinned. The room was watching now. 300 faces, phones beginning to lift above the crowd like little glass eyes. He was feeding on it. "Or what, sweetheart? You'll call someone? Who are you going to call?" "I'm asking you once. let go. Instead, he let go by shoving. He pushed her back and away from him, a hard, flat shove to the shoulder, the kind you give a door that's stuck. Willa's heel caught the leg of the chair behind her. She went down. She hit the floor hard on her hip and her hand, the marble cold and unforgiving under her palm. Her coat splayed open. The white envelope slid half out of the inside pocket and lay there on the polished stone, inches from her fingers. For 1 second, the whole ballroom held its breath. Then someone laughed. And once one person laughed, the permission spread like a struck match. Laughter rolled across the tables. Phones zoomed in. A man near the bar called out, "Welcome to the floor, honey!" And his friends howled. Someone started a slow clap. Then another joined. The sound rolled around the room like a cruel applause for a performance she never agreed to give. A waiter looked away, ashamed. Theo, the young server, took 1 step forward, and a manager caught his sleeve and shook his head. Don't. Not your fight, kid. Willa did not cry. She did not shout. She knelt there on the marble for a moment, gathering herself, and then she reached out. Not for help, not for the hands that weren't being offered, but for the envelope. She picked it up first, before her own dignity, before she even stood. She slid it back into her coat, deep this time, and pressed it flat. Only then did she get to her feet. "You're going to want to remember this moment," she said, brushing the dust from her sleeve. "All of you. You're going to want to remember exactly where you were standing." "Is that a threat?" Sterling laughed, delighted. "Did you all hear that? She's threatening me. At my own party." He clapped his hands together, loud, a man calling for service. "Security! Where is my security?" 2 men in dark suits moved through the crowd. The larger one, a broad man with a shaved head and an earpiece, reached the table first. His name, stitched into his lapel, was Wade Coleman. He looked at Willa, then at Sterling, and his face was the careful blank of a man who has learned not to ask questions of the man who signs his check. "This one's leaving," Sterling said. "She forced her way into a private event. She got aggressive. She threatened me in front of witnesses." He fixed his tie, smoothing the performance back into place. "Walk her out, the back way. I don't want her stinking up the lobby on the way." Wade hesitated, just a second. He looked at the woman in the gray coat, at the calm in her eyes that didn't match anything Sterling was describing. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm going to need you to come with me." "I understand," Willa said. "You're doing your job. I won't make it hard for you." That stopped him for a moment, too. People being thrown out did not usually thank the man throwing them. She offered no resistance. She simply turned toward the doors, slow and steady, chin level, the wet stain from earlier already drying stiff on her coat. But the room would not let her leave with grace. As she passed the tables, a woman rose from her seat. Eleanor Vance, draped in emerald silk and enough diamonds to buy a house, a major donor, a fixture at every gala for a decade. She plucked the linen napkin from her lap, and as Willa passed, she tossed it at her feet. "There," Eleanor said, to laughter, "since you're already down there so much, clean something on your way out." The napkin landed on the marble. Willa stopped. She looked at it. She looked at Eleanor, and then, very deliberately, she bent down, picked up the napkin, folded it in half, and set it neatly back on Eleanor's table. "You dropped this," she said. "It happens. People drop things they think they'll always have." Eleanor's smile faltered. She didn't know why. The words were polite. The words were almost kind. but something underneath them felt like a door quietly closing. Wade put a light hand on Willa's shoulder. "This way, ma'am." They began to walk, past the stage with its banner, "Building Tomorrow," past the podium where in 20 minutes Sterling was supposed to give a speech about vision and legacy and the values that built an empire, past 300 guests, half of them filming, none of them standing up for the woman in the gray coat. And here's the thing nobody in that ballroom understood yet. At the far side of the room, near the service doors, a man in a navy suit had been watching the whole thing. His name was Gregory Combs. He had run the day-to-day operations of the Haltmore Group for 11 years. He knew every account, every contract, every name that mattered. And the moment Willa Turner had stood up off that floor and turned her face toward the light, Gregory Combs had gone white as the tablecloth. The glass in his hand slipped. He didn't catch it. It shattered on the floor, and he didn't even look down. Because Gregory knew that face. He had seen it across a boardroom table. He had seen it on a document that the entire future of the company depended on. And he was now watching his chairman drag the single most powerful shareholder in the Haltmore Group toward the back exit like a piece of trash. He started moving. Fast. Pushing through the crowd, knocking shoulders, his voice already climbing in his throat. But for one more moment, no one heard him. For one more moment, the laughter still ruled the room. And Willa Turner walked quietly toward the door, the envelope pressed against her heart, waiting for the exact second the whole world would turn over. They were almost at the doors when Sterling decided that walking her out wasn't enough. He had turned back toward the stage, ready to let security finish the job. But the room was still buzzing, still filming, still hanging on him, and a man like Sterling Haltmore could not resist an audience that hungry. So he called out across the ballroom, loud and bright. "Wait! Wade! Bring her back a second!" Wade stopped. "Sir, bring her back. I'm not done." Sterling strode toward the center of the floor, spreading his arms like a host, welcoming everyone to the real show. "You know what? In 30 years, nobody has ever had the nerve to crash my event and then threaten me to my face. I think that deserves a proper goodbye." Wade's hand tightened slightly on Willa's shoulder. He leaned down, his voice low, just for her. "Ma'am, let's just keep walking. Please." "It's all right," Willa murmured. "Let him finish. He needs to." So she let Wade turn her around. She walked back, calm, unhurried, into the center of 300 people and 100 glowing phones. "There she is," Sterling announced. "Our gatecrasher. Take one last look, everybody, because this is the face of entitlement. This is somebody who thinks the rules don't apply to her, walks in off the street in a wet rag of a coat and expects to sit at a table that costs more than she makes in a year." Laughter. He drank it in. "Tell me something," he said, circling her again, the predator's slow loop. "What was the plan? Sneak in, grab some shrimp, stuff your purse with silverware? Or did you think one of these gentlemen might take you home if you sat there looking sad enough?" The crowd gasped and laughed at once. Somewhere, a woman said, "Oh my God, Sterling," but she was smiling when she said it. Willa said nothing. She let the words land and slide off, like rain off the windows of the lobby behind her. That silence enraged him more than anything. He stepped close. "Say something. You had plenty to say a minute ago. Remember this moment." "Remember what? Go on. Tell the room what we're all supposed to remember." "You wouldn't believe me," Willa said softly, "if I told you now. So I'll wait." "You'll wait," he laughed, turning to the crowd. She'll wait. For what? For your ride? For your caseworker? He shook his head, wiping at his eye like the joke had brought him to tears. God, this is sad. This is genuinely sad. Then his gaze dropped to her coat, to the slight bulge over her heart where she kept her hand pressed flat. What is that? He said. What are you holding on to like that? The whole time? What's in the coat? For the first time, something in Willa's face changed. Not fear. Something more like warning. That's mine, she said. Leave it. Oh. Sterling's eyes lit. He'd found the soft spot at last. Oh, now you care about something. What is it, huh? What's so precious? He reached for her coat. Let's see it. Don't. His fingers caught the edge of the envelope, just the corner, white against the gray wool. Willa's hand snapped over his wrist. Not violent, just firm, immovable, the grip of someone who had carried heavy things her whole life. I said, leave it, she said. The ballroom went very quiet. Even Sterling felt it, the sudden steel under the calm, the way she held his wrist like she could break it, and simply chose not to. For half a second, his confidence wobbled, then he covered it with cruelty, the way bullies always do. He wrenched his hand back and shoved her again, harder this time, both palms to her shoulders. Willa staggered into Wade, who caught her before she could fall a second time. Get her out, Sterling snapped, the smile gone now, his face flushed. I want her in the alley. I want her phone checked for what she stole, and I want every camera in this room to stop pointing at me. He yanked at his collar. This is my night. 25 years, and you're not going to ruin it. You nobody. The word hung there. Nobody. He said it like a verdict. Wade started walking her toward the doors again, faster now, almost shielding her with his body. The crowd pressed in on both sides, a corridor of silk and diamonds and contempt. A man stuck out his phone an inch from her face. A woman hissed, "Disgusting!" Eleanor Vance lifted her champagne in a mocking little toast as Willa passed. And through all of it, Willa Turner kept her chin level and her eyes forward, and she did not let them see her break, because she had decided a long time ago that people like this would never get to see her break. But inside, something was happening. Inside, a clock was running down, because near the service doors, Gregory Combs had finally broken free of the crowd. He came around the end of the bar at a half run, his navy jacket flapping open, his face the color of ash. He had his phone out. On the screen, anyone close enough could have seen what he'd just pulled up. A corporate filing, a name in bold type at the top, and a percentage that made his hands shake. "Sterling!" he shouted. "Sterling! Stop!" But the room was too loud. The chairman was already turning back to his guests, arms wide, rebuilding his ruined moment. "Folks, I apologize for the interruption. Please, let's get back to celebrating what really matters." "Sterling!" Gregory's voice cracked across the ballroom like a whip. People turned. "Do not let her leave. Do not let that woman walk out that door." Sterling frowned, annoyed at his own operations chief. "Gregory, relax. Security's handling it. She's nobody." Gregory reached the center of the floor, gasping, and grabbed Sterling's arm with a desperation that made the chairman flinch. "Listen to me," he whispered, but in the new silence it carried. "Listen to me very carefully. You need to take your hands off that situation right now. You need to apologize right now, before it's too late." "Apologize?" Sterling barked a laugh. "To her? Have you lost your—" "Do you know who that is?" Gregory's voice was shaking. Do you have any idea who you just threw on the floor? The question stopped everything. 300 people leaned in. Phones turned from Willa to the two men at the center. Even the string quartet finally fell silent, bows lifting off strings. Sterling looked at his operations chief, then at the woman in the gray coat, now standing near the doors, Wade's hand still on her shoulder. She had turned around. She was watching them both, perfectly calm, the faintest patience in her eyes, like a teacher waiting for a slow student to finally arrive at the answer. "She's a gatecrasher," Sterling said, but his voice had lost something. A thread of doubt had crept in. "She's some woman who—" "Her name," Gregory said, "is Willa Turner." The name meant nothing to Sterling. He shrugged. "So?" Gregory closed his eyes for a second, like a man bracing for impact. When he opened them, he spoke slowly, carefully, so there could be no mistake. "Turner," he said, "as in Turner Holdings, as in the investment group that's been quietly buying Haltmore stock for 2 years through a dozen shell accounts." He held up his phone, the filing glowing on the screen. "The buyout we couldn't trace. The mystery shareholder the board has been terrified of. Sterling, it's her. It was always her." A murmur began at the edges of the room and spread inward. Sterling's face had started to change. The flush draining out of it, the smile dissolving. "No," he said. "No, that's not possible. She walked in here in a coat," Willa said from across the room. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. The whole ballroom had gone silent enough to hear a pin drop on marble. "In a wet, cheap coat. I know. I wore it on purpose." She began to walk back toward the center of the floor. Slowly. The crowd parted for her now. Not the way it parts for a king, but the way it parts for something it suddenly, finally, fears. "I wanted to see it," she said. "The real thing. Not the version of this company you show the cameras, the version you show a stranger you think can't do anything to you." She stopped a few feet from Sterling, and for the first time all night, she let the smallest, coldest smile touch her lips. "I've seen it now." She reached into her coat, and this time, no one moved to stop her. This time, the most powerful man in the room took a step back as her fingers closed around the white envelope and drew it slowly into the light. The envelope was plain, white, a little bent at one corner from the fall. She unsealed it with one finger and drew out a single folded document, thick stock, an embossed seal catching the chandelier light. "This is a certified ownership statement," Willa said, "filed 3 days ago. I had it printed on paper because some things should be held in the hand, not scrolled past on a screen." She opened it and turned it so the front row could see. "Read the top line, Mr. Combs. Out loud, so there's no confusion." Gregory's voice came out hoarse. "Turner Holdings, LLC, controlling interest. Haltmore Group, 61%. The number moved through the room like a cold wind. 61%. Not a stake, not a share. Control. 61, Willa repeated softly. "I rounded down to 60 when I told my lawyers, just to be modest." A thin smile. "But it's 61, which means, Mr. Haltmore, that for the last several months you have not owned this company. You've worked for me." Sterling's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He looked at the document, then at Gregory, then back at the document, searching each one for the lie that would put the floor back under his feet. There wasn't one. That's fraud," he managed finally. "You can't just buy a company in secret, sneak in. There are laws." "There are," Willa agreed. "I followed every one of them. My acquisitions were disclosed to the SEC on schedule. The shell accounts were legal vehicles, properly reported. Your own board approved the share issuances that let me in the door, Sterling. You signed 2 of them yourself. She tilted her head. You really should read what you sign. I read everything you've signed. That's how I knew exactly what kind of company I was buying. The flush had gone completely from his face now. He was gray, grayer than her coat. Why? He said. It came out small. Why would you do this? Why come here like this? Why not just call a meeting? Because a meeting wouldn't tell me the truth. She folded the document and slid it back into her coat, and the gesture was almost gentle. Numbers told me this company was profitable. Numbers don't tell you how a place treats a stranger it thinks is powerless. For that, you have to walk in wearing the wrong coat and watch what people do. Her eyes moved across the room, slow, deliberate, touching the faces that had laughed. And you all showed me. Every one of you. You showed me exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. No one laughed now. The phones were still raised, but the people behind them had gone very still, suddenly aware that they were not filming a victim. They were filming themselves. I came to make a decision tonight, Willa went on, a simple one, whether to keep the people running this company or clean house from the top down. I hadn't decided yet when I walked in. She turned back to Sterling. You decided for me. Wait! The word burst out of him. He took a step toward her, hands rising, the performer's instinct to recover. Wait! Let's talk about this. Privately. You and me. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding, and I'd hate for one bad moment to overshadow 25 good years. You poured wine on me, Willa said. The room flinched. You pulled me out of a chair. You shoved me to the floor. Twice. You told your security to put me in an alley and search me for things I stole, in front of 300 people, while they laughed. Her voice never rose. That was the terrible part. It stayed level, calm, almost kind, and that made every word heavier. That wasn't a misunderstanding, Mr. Haltmore. That was the most honest thing you've done all night.
Sterling Haltmore, chairman. The name on the building, the face on the banner, felt his legs go loose beneath him. He reached out and gripped the back of a chair to stay upright. The same chair, near the same table, where 40 minutes ago a quiet woman in a gray coat had been sitting alone, asking only for a glass of water. Across the room, the great banner glowed over the silent stage. Haltmore, building tomorrow. And tomorrow had just arrived, early, and it did not belong to him.
Gregory, Willa said, without taking her eyes off Sterling. As of this moment, I'm invoking my rights as controlling shareholder. I want an emergency board session tonight. Top floor, 1 hour. She finally looked away from Sterling, dismissing him as easily as he had once dismissed her. And someone, please get Theo, the young man who brought me water. I'd like him in the room when we begin. She turned toward the elevators. The crowd, 300 strong, parted before her without a sound, a clean path opening across the marble where, minutes earlier, she had been dragged. Behind her, Sterling Haltmore stood alone in the center of his own gala, holding a chair, watching the woman in the cheap gray coat walk into the heart of his empire to decide what was left of his life. Sterling went after her. He let go of the chair and crossed the floor in quick, stumbling steps, his polished shoes loud in the silence. Willa, Miss Turner, please. The name he'd refused to ask for an hour ago now poured out of him like a prayer. Just give me 5 minutes. One conversation. We can fix this. She didn't stop walking. "I built this company," he said, catching up beside her, his voice cracking. 25 years. From 2 buildings and a loan. You can't just... You don't know what it takes to run something like this. You need me. The board needs me. The banks trust me." "The banks," Willa said, still walking, "will trust whoever signs the checks. That's not loyalty, Mr. Haltmore. That's arithmetic." Okay. He got in front of her, walking backward now, hands up, pleading. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and I am so deeply sorry. I didn't know who you were." She stopped, and for the first time there was something almost sad in her face. "I know," she said. "That's the whole problem. You were only sorry the second you found out I mattered. An hour ago, I was a woman who needed a glass of water, and you put me on the floor. If Gregory hadn't run across that room, if I really were nobody, you'd have had me searched in an alley and gone back to your champagne and slept fine tonight." She let that sit. "Don't apologize to me for what I own. You should be apologizing for what you did to someone you thought owned nothing." His mouth worked. No words came. Behind them, the room had begun to shift. People who'd been laughing an hour ago were now backing toward the exits, suddenly very interested in their coats. Eleanor Vance had sunk low into her chair, the champagne flute set down, the diamonds at her throat catching light she no longer seemed to want. Gregory appeared at Willa's side with 2 members of the building's senior staff. "The board's being called in," he said quietly. "Top floor, as you asked. Legal is on the phone now." "Good." She turned to Wade Coleman, the security guard, who had stayed close the whole time, unsure where his loyalty was now supposed to point. "Mr. Coleman, you followed an order tonight. I understand that. But I watched you hesitate before you touched me, and I watched you catch me when he shoved me. You were the only one in a uniform who treated me like a person." She nodded toward Sterling. "I'd like you to escort Mr. Haltmore off the event floor. Calmly, with more dignity than he gave me. He can wait in his office until the board is ready for him." Wade looked at Sterling. For 11 years this man had signed his paychecks, snapped his fingers, never once learned his name. Wade straightened his jacket. "Mr. Haltmore," he said. "Sir, this way, please." "You work for me," Sterling hissed. "No, sir," Wade said, not unkindly. "I don't think either of us does, anymore." It hit Sterling harder than any shout. He looked around the ballroom, at the empty dance floor, the abandoned tables, the banner with his name glowing over a stage no one was watching. 300 guests had come to celebrate him. Now, they wouldn't meet his eyes. "This is my night," he said. But it came out as a whisper, to no one. Wade gestured toward the side door, and Sterling Haltmore, chairman of the Haltmore Group, was walked off the floor of his own anniversary gala, not in handcuffs, not dragged, but quietly, the way you remove something that's been broken and can't be left where the guests might trip on it. At the elevators, Willa pressed the button for the top floor. The doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped in, and Gregory followed, and so did young Theo, the server, still holding a tray he'd forgotten to set down, his eyes enormous. "You wanted me, ma'am?" Theo said. Did I do something wrong?" "No," Willa said. The doors began to close on the ruined gala below. "You did the only thing right in that whole room. You brought a stranger a glass of water and called her ma'am." She almost smiled. "I'm about to decide who runs the people in this company. I'd like the room to remember what that's supposed to look like. So you're coming up." The elevator rose. The boardroom on the 42nd floor had a wall of glass and a view of the whole lit city. By the time the directors filed in, it was past 11, and most of them had come straight from the gala below, still in their tuxedos, still pale from what they'd seen.
Willa took the seat at the head of the table, not the chairman's chair. She pulled an ordinary one to the end and sat in that, the gray coat finely draped over the back, the wine stain still visible under the lights. Theo stood quietly by the wall. Wade waited near the door.
"I'm not here to make a speech," she said, "so I'll be brief. Tomorrow morning, the city wakes up to 100 videos of what happened in that ballroom. We don't get to choose whether this company is in the news. We only get to choose what the news finds when it starts digging." She laid a slim folder on the table. "And it's going to dig, so let's get ahead of it." She opened the folder. Inside were the things her people had spent 2 years quietly assembling. Not just share filings, but the rest of it. "For the past 8 years," she said, "Sterling Haltmore has been running 2 companies. The one in the annual report, and the one underneath it." She slid pages toward the directors. "Vendor contracts steered to a construction firm his brother-in-law owns, at inflated rates. Roughly $4 million a year skimmed through consulting fees that bought no consulting. A severance pattern that should frighten every lawyer in this room. 11 employees paid to stay quiet over 6 years, 9 of them black, 2 of them women who reported him." The room had gone silent in a different way now. This was not the shock of the ballroom. This was the cold dread of people realizing what they'd signed their names beneath. "I didn't buy this company because it was broken," Willa said. "I bought it because it was good, underneath a man who was rotting it from the top. The buildings are solid. The people who actually do the work are solid. He is the part that has to go." A director near the middle cleared his throat. Howard Reed, gray and cautious, a Haltmore man for 2 decades. "Miss Turner, with respect, the optics of removing him the same night you appeared, they could look like a personal—" "It could," she agreed. "So we won't do it on my word. We'll do it on the record." She turned to Gregory. "Read the bylaws. Cause for removal of a chairman." Gregory had the book ready. Section 4. Conduct materially harmful to the company's reputation or breach of fiduciary duty. He looked up. "Tonight covers the first. The folder covers the second." "Then I'd like a motion," Willa said. "Not from me. I won't vote my shares on this. I want this board to remove him because it's right, not because I made you. If you can't do that, then you're the next conversation I have." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, Howard Reed, the cautious one, the company man, pushed back his chair and stood. "I've looked the other way on the vendor thing for 3 years, he said, his voice rough. "I told myself it wasn't my business. Tonight, I watched him pour wine on a woman and call it entitlement when she objected." He swallowed. "I move that Sterling Haltmore be removed as chairman and chief executive, effective immediately, for cause." "Second," said a woman down the table, fast, like she'd been waiting. The vote went around the room. One by one, hands rose. It was not close. When it was done, the chair at the head of the table, the real one, the tall leather one, sat empty. And it stayed empty. Down in his office, Sterling was told by phone. Those who were near the door said there was no shouting, just a long silence, and then the quiet click of a man hanging up on the end of his own life's work. The weeks that followed moved fast. The videos went everywhere, the way Willa knew they would. But the story that traveled with them was not the one Sterling would have written. Reporters who started with "Billionaire humiliates woman at gala" kept pulling the thread, and the thread kept unspooling. The vendor kickbacks, the silenced employees, the settlements. The state attorney general's office opened an inquiry into the consulting fees. The brother-in-law's construction firm lost every contract it held. Sterling himself faced civil claims from 3 former employees whose settlements had bought a silence that no longer held. He was not dragged off to prison in chains. Real justice rarely looks like that. Instead, it looked like a man who lost his company, his title, and his name on the building, which came down in March and went up again in plain letters that did not say Haltmore. It looked like board seats evaporating, club memberships quietly not renewed, calls that stopped being returned. It looked like a long, slow accounting in courtrooms and headlines for things he'd assumed no one would ever make him pay for. Eleanor Vance, who had thrown a napkin at a woman on the floor, found that her own foundation's lucrative partnership with the company was not renewed that quarter. No announcement, no drama, just a polite letter and a door that no longer opened. And the guests, the 300 who had laughed, who had filmed, who had said disgusting and welcome to the floor, honey, woke up over the following days to find their own faces in the videos too. Not anonymous, not hidden, laughing. Some of them issued apologies. Most just learned, for the first time in their comfortable lives, what it feels like to be judged by a single moment when you assumed no one important was watching. Willa did not gloat. She gave one short statement to the press, and only one. I wasn't testing whether they'd be kind to a powerful woman, she said. I was testing whether they'd be kind to a powerless one. That's the only test that ever tells you the truth about a person, or a company. She paused. We failed it, badly. Now we get to decide what we build instead. Then she went back to work, in a building that no longer carried the old name with the people worth keeping, to build the tomorrow the banner had only ever pretended to promise. 6 months later, the lobby of the old hotel looked the same. Same marble, same chandelier the size of a car, but the name above the doors was new, and so was the feeling inside them. Willa kept the gray coat. She hung it in a glass case on the executive floor, wine stain and all, with a small brass plate beneath it that read, "In case we forget." Every new manager who came through for orientation was walked past it. Most didn't understand it first. By the end of the tour, they always did. She did not burn the company down, the way she'd promised that first night she could. Burning things was Sterling's instinct, not hers. Instead, she went floor by floor and found the people who'd been overlooked, the ones who'd been passed over, talked down to, paid less for the same work. She found the housekeeper whose name no executive had ever bothered to learn, and learned it. Rosa. She found the night shift engineer who'd kept the building running through 2 blackouts and never once got a thank you. And one by one, quietly, without a press release, she moved them up. Theo, the young server who brought a stranger a glass of water, did not stay a server. Willa put him through a hospitality management program on the company's money. Within a year, he was running guest relations for the whole property, the youngest in the building's history. He still tells the story to new hires, and he always ends it the same way. She didn't promote me because I was nice to someone important. She promoted me because I was nice to someone who looked like she didn't matter. That's the only version that counts. Wade Coleman became head of security. The first thing he changed was the policy on removing guests. No one gets touched, he ruled, until a manager has actually walked over and checked the list with their own eyes. He'd learned, the hard way, what it costs a person and a company to skip that one small step. Sterling Haltmore,
The last anyone heard had moved out of the city. The civil suits were settled. The investigations ran their course. He was not in prison, but he was not in any boardroom either. A private citizen now, in a smaller house, with a name that opened no doors. For a man who had built his whole life on his name opening every door, that may have been the heaviest sentence of all. And Willa went on doing the quiet thing she'd always done. Walking into rooms in plain clothes, sitting at the edge, not the center, watching how people treated the person they assumed had nothing to offer them. Because she knew the one thing most powerful people spend their whole lives never learning. The truest measure of anyone is how they treat someone who can do absolutely nothing for them. Some nights, long after the floor had emptied, the cleaning crew would find her standing in the lobby, looking up at that glass case and the gray coat inside it, the way a sailor checks the sky before a long trip out. So let me ask you the same question she was really asking that night. Think about the last time you watched someone get treated like they were invisible. A server, a cleaner, a tired stranger in the wrong coat. What did you do? Did you say something? Or did you look away, like almost everyone in that ballroom did? Tell me in the comments. I read them. And I think this one is going to start some honest conversations. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. And subscribe, because we tell one of these every single week. Okay, real talk. The part that stuck with me isn't the wine, or even the big 61% reveal. It's that she wore the cheap coat on purpose. She knew people would show her exactly who they were the second they thought she was powerless. And they did. That honestly scares me a little, because it makes me wonder how I'd act if I didn't know the quiet person in the corner could change my whole life. We treat nobodies like the test doesn't count, but it always counts. Somebody is always watching how you treat them when you think they can't touch you, and the realest one watching is you.